Hello, this is Dana and welcome to the Orchid Hut. Thank you for taking some of your time today to watch one of my orchid videos. Welcome to all of the new subscribers. I continue to appreciate everyone's thumbs up as well as your comments. Today's video is going to be about a section or type of Dendrobium called Phalaenanthe. And this particular Dendrobium is better known as the Phalaenopsis-type Dendrobiums. And Dendrobiums can be classified into 5 or 6 different sections or types, depending on the source that you read. But this particular section of Dendrobium is actually well agreed upon in the orchid world. So let's first talk about why they're called the Phalaenopsis-type orchids. Well, it's only because they typically produce a spike that's similar to a Phalaenopsis orchid, and the bloom looks similar to the moth orchid, and that's where the similarities end. The Dendrobium is not in any way related to the Phalaenopsis. And they're sympodial, which means they have more than one point of growth. They are mostly epiphytic type orchids that grow in tropical regions. Now, if you think about the species of this type of Dendrobium, there are really only about 7. And those 7 species are found in northern Australia, Indonesia, New Guinea, as well as the Tanimar Islands off the coast of Indonesia and New Guinea. So that particular habitat has open tropical forests, and about 3 to 5 months out of the year, there's a very, very rainy monsoon season when these orchids are going through their growing period. And then the remainder of the year, it's more arid and dry. And those growing conditions help us figure out what we need to provide the hybrid orchids that we have in our care as home growers. So, many hybrids, of course, have been developed from these 7 original species, and they are widely cultivated simply because they produce these hard cane type Dendrobiums, which are really easy to grow. And sometimes the canes can be tall and slender, as you can see from my plants. Sometimes the canes can be a bit shorter and more stout. The leaves are usually maybe about 6 to 8 leaves per cane, and they'll have an arching spike with about a dozen or so blooms somewhere near the top of the plant, often from the very top. Now, if we go back to how they grow in the wild, that helps us determine how we need to take care of them. So during the growing season, they need high humidity, they need bright filtered light in order to bloom, and they need a lot of water. They do well on mounts, but if you put them in a pot, they like to have very tight potted conditions. They don't like to be over potted at all. And when they bloom, they're usually going to have pink, white, or purple flowers, or some combination of those 3 colors. I have 3 of these orchids in my collection, and so let's kind of walk through those and where I grow them and how I grow them, and we'll tie it back into the species orchids as we go. And I'll also be putting a link in the upper right hand corner of the screen if there was a previous video on this orchid. So this one is my Dendrobium Phalaenanthe. I did do a video on this one previously. It has a gorgeous white bloom with a pink center, and I cut this bloom off several weeks ago, so it has finished flowering for this season. I have been growing it on a mount, and one of the other characteristics of these orchids is that over the course of 2 or 3 years, the leaves will yellow and fall off. So on the older canes, you will often see them be leafless. But this one has been on a mount with sphagnum moss. It has done really, really well, except now it's getting really, really large. And previously, I think I mentioned that when new growth starts on this orchid, I will be transferring it to an appropriate pot because it's about to grow off the mount, and it is pretty top heavy to try to keep this way. Okay, the next one is an orchid that I've had maybe like about 6 or 7 months now. This is Dendrobium New Liberty White, and this one has a very, very thick cane structure. And right now, it's actually in a new growth phase. It has 2 new canes coming up right here. It lost its last bloom at the very, very beginning of the fall. So this one has a different cycle of growth pattern compared to the previous orchid. And the final one is Dendrobium Venus, and I think this is just a trade name. This one has a taller, more slender cane. This one is still in bloom. Gorgeous, gorgeous cluster of pink blooms with a little white edge. So all in all, these orchids are extremely easy to grow and something that you might want to consider adding to your collection. I keep mine outside during the spring and the summer and part of the fall because I'm in a subtropical climate, and I've only had to bring these in for the winter season. So that's a lot of information about one particular section or type of Dendrobium orchid. If you learned something new or like this video, please give it a thumbs up, and the subscribe button will be in the bottom right-hand corner of the screen. Thanks so much for watching. See you next time.